Ireland's housing crisis has become the defining issue of a generation. And in this video, we're going to discuss what is probably the most radical solution to this seemingly intractable problem. Ireland has one of the fastest growing populations in Europe, increasing by nearly 390,000 people between 2016 and 2022. According to Ireland's Housing Commission, the country needs to build an estimated 50 to 62,000 housing units per year until 2050 just to keep up with demand. But as things stand, the government expects to build around 29,000 new units this year. The housing crisis has been particularly hard on younger people and first-time buyers, who are entering a housing market marked by scarcity and inflated prices. This has led many young people to leave the country, or to continue living with family well into young adulthood, giving rise to nicknames like Generation Rent and Generation Stuck at Home. In fact, Ireland has one of the largest generational gaps for homeowners in Western Europe, with barely 1/3 of adults under 40 owning their home, compared to 80% of adults over 40. The solution seems simple: build more houses. But how? And where? Given that Dublin is one of the least dense European cities with a population of over 1 million, it makes sense to go higher within the capital. But as we showed in a previous video, it's difficult to build within a city due to strict planning laws and objections from existing residents. And while we can get creative with ideas like street plans to allow neighbourhoods to densify organically, such policies are unlikely to solve the housing crisis on their own. The other option is to sprawl outwards into the countryside, but this uses more land and increases travel distances, commute times, and our environmental footprint. In any case, government policy has steadily moved away from urban sprawl towards building on brownfield, land that has already been built on, as opposed to greenfield, which is, well, green fields. So if building within a city is slow and expensive, and government policy has made it harder to build in the countryside, what options are left? The weird thing about this housing crisis is, Ireland has plenty of land. At 73 people per square kilometre, it is the second least densely populated country in Western Europe. With the right policies, a rising population shouldn't be an intractable problem. Which brings us to a policy idea that is probably the country's best hope for solving the housing crisis. Transit-oriented development, or TOD, entails building high-density, mixed-use developments in close proximity to transport infrastructure.
It's the idea that you build an urban area around transit rather than the other way around. The principle is that it's actually easier to build homes around an existing transit network than it is to build transit around an existing city.
Taking Metro North, for example, an 18.8 kilometre rail line from Dublin Airport to the city that has cost 300 million in research and planning, but is unlikely to be ready before 2035. Ireland has a lot of greenfield sites located next to underused rail lines, which presents an opportunity to densify near train stations. And density is important, because when people live near one another, they don't have to travel as far. Density makes rail more viable, while more walking and cycling means people are healthier, and higher density reduces our carbon footprint. Density can even help our economy, due to something economists call agglomeration, which is the benefit that comes from allowing talent and jobs to easily find one another. Tokyo has had great success with transit-oriented development in meeting its housing needs. Beginning in the 1960s, rail companies built lines from the city centre to the suburbs and invested heavily in housing and commercial space near train stations. The outcome saw dense, walkable suburbs with a strong emphasis on rail to get around.
When you build a train line, you inherently make all the land along the train much more valuable because you're increasing its connectivity for letting the people move, access jobs and so on. In places like Tokyo, like the city of Tokyo came to be what it is like the world's greatest city, the world's denser, largest city, best connected city. And that's a consequence of the whole city was built by private rail companies.
But Ireland's not Tokyo, which begs the question, is TOD a realistic solution to Ireland's housing crisis? To explore how TOD might work in Ireland, we selected 8 locations that we regard as the most suitable candidates for such a densification, based on the academic literature on TOD and successful projects elsewhere. At a national level, the highest housing prices are to be found in County Dublin and surrounding counties. High prices suggest high demand relative to supply, and are therefore a good indicator of where the greatest shortages exist. To relieve these shortages and ensure that developments are viable, it makes sense to prioritise TOD developments in these areas. After analysing multiple options, we settled on the following 8 locations: Clonsilla and Clongriffin in County Dublin, Lochsala and the M3 Parkway in County Meath, Leixlip, Hazelhatch and Selbridge, and Sallins and Naas in County Kildare, and Kilcool in County Wicklow. What these locations have in common is greenfield land in close proximity to a railway station and a major road. While greenfield development is not the first preference of national policy, building on such land at high density is preferable to low density sprawl. If repeated at scale and combined with densification projects within cities itself, TOD could be Ireland's best way out of the current housing impasse. In our next video, we choose one area from the 8 and use software to model what the densified area might look like, placing a strong emphasis on aesthetic beauty, mixed-use neighbourhoods, and gentle density. So please, subscribe if you'd like to see more from us. And if you've any thoughts on the subject of TOD, we'd love to hear from you.